Hello and welcome to round 5 of Grand Prix Copenhagen. We have our number 1 ranked player in the world, Marcio Carvalho. He's on 4-0 with Death Shadow. His opponent, Humberto Pataka, also 4-0 on Death Shadow. Aside from the overall ranking of players difference, the other difference between these two players is the number of cards in their starting hands. Marcio Carvalho having to work with 5 here, and on the draw, will he be able to pull things back here? I mean, I don't necessarily think of Death Shadow as a deck that mulligans especially well.
Well, yeah, because you need these cards to go down on life, but in the mirror it might not be that important. I think but against this card though, I don't want to go down to 5. Yeah, obviously you're disadvantaged, but I think there's ways. Like as long as he keeps drawing threats more than his opponent, there's a way. But this, yeah.
So Inquisition of Kozilek, Abrupt Decay, Street Wraith, and a couple of lands here for Marcio Carvalho. Thoughtseize the play from Humberto Pataka, and now that it becomes clear that we have a Death Shadow mirror, which are the important cards that we really need to be looking out for? It seems to me like just navigating life totals when both players have Death Shadows is a little bit complicated.
Yeah, it's very complicated. I mean, how low do you want to go and not be facing lethal from your opponent? It's a very tough question, and especially when you keep taking Temur Battle Rage into account, it gets even worse.
Marcio Carvalho cycles a Street Wraith, can't afford to have too many turns where he's not getting much going. It looks like he drew a second Street Wraith because that's another cycle there. Finds a Thoughtseize of his own. Well, these life totals, they be tumbling.
Yeah. 14, 12. If he plays a shock land and a Thoughtseize, that's 12. Yeah, deal myself 8. 3 cards left in hand.
And he sees a Temur Battle Rage. That one of the super high power level cards in this matchup. And slightly raised eyebrows there from Marcio Carvalho. That is a powerhouse hand. One thing to note, though, no extra land in that hand. Humberto Pataka, he's going to have to rely on the top of his deck if he wants to find a second land to be able to get something like that Tarmogoyf going. Be very interesting to see what Marcio takes here. I'm sure he's practiced this matchup a fair amount, and it may well inform us a little bit about what the right strategy is for this kind of a Death Shadow mirror.
Yeah, this is a tough one. He could take the only threat in the form of Tarmogoyf, but he's already got the Abrupt Decay for it. He could take the only card Humberto could play, the Fatal Push. He's certainly not taking the Temur Battle Rage, or at least I'd be very surprised. Yeah, it seems like he's not gonna assume Humberto is not drawing lands. He's just taking the most powerful card. He knows Kolaghan's Command is like the most powerful one. It's also kind of this semi-threat, because you know when your opponent has it in hand, he can always take back a creature.
Yeah, I mean, if you take the Tarmogoyf and they still have the command, they can still get back the Tarmogoyf at some point. I mean, at that point, Marcio's basically, I guess, hoping that his opponent does not see lands, and as it turns out, that's not the case. Liliana was the draw then. Another Thoughtseize the pickup here for Humberto Pataka. Marcio had a second land but no plays, which wasn't too much of a surprise given the reactiveness of his hand. Fatal Push and Abrupt Decay remaining in Marcio Carvalho's hand here. Now, given that Humberto has drawn a Liliana of the Veil, I would guess that the Abrupt Decay is the pickup, and that is the one that goes to the graveyard. So just landed Fatal Push for Marcio. He's going to be looking to the top of his deck for basically everything for the rest of this game. Humberto, he just needs lands.
Yep, lands to be able to play that Liliana, which is the only card Marcio does not know about. He's gonna use Mishra's Bauble to look at the top card. Important to know here that he can actually shuffle it away. That's why he's targeting himself. But he decides he wants to draw the card he saw. If he saw a bad card, he would have shuffled it away with one of the fetch lands.
Now a little furrow on the brow of Pataka. He has found his second land, but now he actually has options for things to play.
Yeah, he can play the Tarmogoyf, or he could keep up removal. He still knows about the Fatal Push, but I think there's not really a reason not to play the Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, unless he strongly suspects that he can clear out Marcio Carvalho's hand at some point. Which, I mean, certainly Liliana can help with, but on her own she might struggle to get the whole job done. Also, of course, the question when it comes to any of these decisions around fetch land, shock lands. Which land do you fetch? How much life do you? How low do you want to go on life? And we could very well see that in this matchup, the number of swings by creatures that connect is only 1 or 2 in total.
It seems like he actually kept Ranger of Eos on top, which is quite good. If he finds one more land, that lets him search up 2 more Death Shadows.
So a 1/1 Death Shadow for Marcio Carvalho. He does have Marsh Flats in play though, so he can easily make it up to a 4/4 simply by fetching an untapped shock land.
Umberto's hand's still stuck. Yeah, Liliana, let you sacrifice.
Looks like that's the option that he's going with here. Immediately going down to 1 loyalty to keep the board clear of any creatures on Marcio's side of things. Range of Eos in hand, and the draw is another Thoughtseize.
Yeah, I think that's game over. If he would have drawn a land this turn, he could play the Ranger of Eos and search up 2 Death Shadow. And then discard 1 to the Liliana, but he would still have 1 more and could potentially attack the Liliana. But now it just seems like it's game over.
Yeah, he had to hold on to that Thoughtseize just so that he could protect the Range of Eos in hand to give himself at least another try at drawing a card. If there's a discard spell here for Umberto, that's very potent. But no. Teemo Battle Rage and Thoughtseize getting discarded here. And what is Umberto's follow-up? And he must be thinking about what card stays in hand for Marcio there that doesn't get cast.
Now it's a Tarmogoyf, but he still knows... Marcio still knows about the Fatal Push. Yeah, good play by Marcio. If he would have played Tarmogoyf, his opponent just Fatal Pushes the Tarmogoyf and then lets him sacrifice... lets him discard the Ranger of Eos, which would leave him with nothing left and a Liliana at 3. I don't think he's winning this way, but at least it leaves him a chance with the Ranger of Eos.
I mean, it's definitely an interesting matchup because there are a lot of answers, and when you get right down to it, not all that many threats to end the game in this matchup. I mean, if Umberto starts throwing out creatures, there's a very real chance that Marcio simply has ways of killing them. I mean, we know what's in his hand, but there's, in principle, that is an option. So Street Wraith and Tarmogoyf, respectively, succumbing to Liliana's +1 ability there, and here comes Tarmogoyf from Umberto. Teemo Battle Rage, not the card that Marcio Carvalho was looking for. Just has to pass things back here. And now the count happens. I think Umberto was just assuming that his Tarmogoyf was dead there, so he didn't even bother to figure out how large it was to begin with. Looks like we've got artifact, creature, sorcery, instant, land, I think.
It should be at least 5/6. I don't see a Planeswalker. No enchantment, so probably 5/6.
Marcio dropping 7, so his Death Shadows are big now. There's that.
Yeah, but there's no way back.
I'm intrigued to see how each of these players sideboards, because I'm sure that they will have been thinking about this matchup quite a bit in preparation for this tournament. To traverse the Ulvermild here, clearly with Delirium. So non-basic lands and creatures, in addition to the regular basics, are going to be allowed. Goes for another Death Shadow, because that's a pretty efficient, effective threat here. Coming down as a 3/3. Leaving a little bit of extra mana up, should there be need for Fatal Push.
Doesn't even use the Liliana. Yeah, it doesn't matter. There we go.
And that's game 1 for Umberto Pataka, picking up a straightforward one against Marcio Carvalho, though it must be said, when Carvalho starts the game on 5 cards, that's a tough place to begin with. We'll be back with more of this match and plenty more from our feature match here in Copenhagen right after these messages. Hello and welcome back to this round 5 here at Grand Prix Copenhagen. The format is modern. The players, Marcio Carvalho, #1 ranked player in the world, already down a game to Umberto Pataka, both these players on Jun Death Shadow. While they're sideboarding, we're going to see Magnus Lanto on 5-color Death Shadow up against Kirill Lupalo, who is on Fairies. Both these players 4-0, and a Thoughtseize from Lanto, who's already up a game, sees Hero's Downfall, Spellstutter Sprite, appropriate stutter there, Engineered Explosives, a Batter Skull, and a Fatal Push here.
Yeah, 1 land for Kirill, but he did have the Scry, so he might be looking at a 2nd land on top. Actually, Bitter Blossom, quite of an interesting card. I think it's a very good card against 5-color Death Shadow, giving you all of the chump blocks you need.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. I mean, I think that one of the attractions of playing 5-color Death Shadow is you've got access to both Lingering Souls and Stubborn Denial. Lingering Souls doesn't necessarily look super exciting in the face of a Bitter Blossom, though. So a Cycled Street Wraith here from Lanto. Not too worried about taking some hits to his life total if it means that he gets to make a big Death Shadow good and early. In fact, while in many decks the 2 life would be a cost, in this deck, being able to effectively play with fewer cards and lower your life total artificially exactly where Death Shadow wants to be. Passes the turn here with mana up. A Suspended Ancestral Vision will take a bit of time to get going, so Magnus Lanto will be looking to try and find a way of putting pressure on before it resolves. Fetches up a Watery Grave. I can't help but wonder, in the early game, with some of the draws with this deck, whether or not people don't even realize they're on Death Shadow at all. Because, I mean, if you see a Godless Shrine and a Watery Grave, typically that signals something unusual is going on.
There's usually 8 cards that ring a bell, like the Mishra's Bauble and the Street Wraith. Like, these are the cards that are only getting played in Death Shadow. But Godless Shrine and Watery Grave, this could be, I don't know, Esper Control. If my opponent would be Guillaume Wafatapa and he was playing Godless Shrine and Watery Grave, I wouldn't suspect he's playing Death Shadow. And
then when you see a Stomping Ground, at some point, all bets are off. What are they playing? It could be anything at this point. But all you know is it's not something that you've prepared for as well as many of the decks in this room. Lingering Souls does come down. 2/1/1 flyers for Magnus Lanto, and of course the option to flash it back next turn for 2 more.
To be fair, if I would be facing Guillaume Wafatapa, I would never think of anything with creatures.
Well, I mean, a Grave Titan maybe.
Yeah, one Grave
Torrential Gearhulk perhaps, but not aggressive creatures.
No.
Lupalo keeping it simple, keeping it slow for now, but slow and simple is not the way to win the race against Magnus Lanto. Lots of cards in hand. He has got access to Stubborn Denial in hand here, though currently not a creature big enough to turn on Formidable.
Formidable.
A Death Shadow right now would be a 5/5, so an interesting option for him. I'm guessing that with a 5-color mana base, it must be a real puzzle to figure out exactly how to use your fetch lands.
Yeah. One certainty there is. You always want to take 3. But apart from that, it's like, this is actually perfect. He can play both Death Shadow because he's got double black. He could keep a blue if he wants to, doesn't want to flashback. He knows about Engineer Explosives anyway, so doesn't want to overextend all of his spirits.
Has the Stubborn Denial in order to keep Death Shadow around facing the first removal spell. We have heard that Marcio Carvalho's match is just kicking off. We'll jump across to that in a moment. We'll just see whether or not Kirill Lupalo can do much to get things going here. Has to use the Hero's Downfall as well on that Death Shadow, so gradually sort of eking his way through. But if Magnus Lanto has much follow-up here, he could be in trouble.
Yeah, and he's put himself at 8 facing 2 Creeping Tarpit, so 3 attacks is lethal. Like, if he fetches 1 more time and takes 2, it's only 2 attacks. Yeah, 6. So he's got to be very careful here.
Liliana the Last Hope immediately putting a few cards in the graveyard, looking to get a creature back. Death Shadow is that creature. And 6 life. This is the other side of being at 6. He's got a 7/7 in play. I'm not sure that this is the matchup where you necessarily keep in your Teemo Battle Rages, but if he had one, he could swing for lethal here.
Yeah, but Kirill doing a good job of keeping the threats away from the board. Like the 2 spirits, he doesn't mind that much. Of course, in the long run, they will kill him. But as long as he keeps killing the Dead Shadow and the Tarmogoyf, he's got quite some time. And next turn, it's Ancestral Vision time.
So Kirill here, he's on blue-black fairies. He's got to figure out a way of navigating these turns, seeing if he can take control here. Engineered explosives for 1 is his choice. He had a few options there in terms of what was the best explosives to go for.
He's waiting. Does he run into the Boros Charm? Indestructible.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you do have to... If you choose to try and play around everything, you're literally playing around everything that costs 4 or less from Magnus Lanto's deck. He has crazy amount of mana options available to him. I guess you're not playing around Cryptic Command. There's not enough blue mana, but you get the idea. Death Shadow's back. He's brought some Spirit Friends. And while Ancestral Vision has come off suspend here, Kirill Lapalo has to be a little bit concerned. It's on 14, but facing 11 in attacks next turn, assuming nothing else changes.
Yeah, Fatal Push, such a good card. Means that Kirill can't even attack with the Creeping Tar Pit, because he will just lose his creature. His hand is double Cryptic Command, which could be good, but he's taking the gamble of...
The Batterskull does leave you open to that same Fatal Push, of course, because the Germ token has a cost of 0. If it stays in play, though, then the life gain from it pretty relevant here.
I think that's a second Stubborn Denial as well for Magnus Lanto. So
And an Abrupt Decay would also be enough to deal with Batterskull for now.
Dead Shadow is such an efficient deck. With so few, like all of your cards are very cheap. Once you get to low life, all of your threats are very big.
It also gets to play as a 52-card deck between Mishra's Bauble and Street Wraith. Liliana letting you get back another threat from the graveyard. I'm guessing yet another Death Shadow here. Actually goes for a Street Wraith. This is interesting. Are there any actual honest-to-goodness swamps in play for Kirill Lapalo now? Because Street Wraith does have Swamp Walk. Alternatively, you know, you can just cycle it, go even lower on life and get to a point where your Death Shadow is lethal.
He's going to 1, yep. And then he'll have a 12/12 and 4 spirits, and then we'll just kill the Germ. Oh, he's going to.
Yeah, I believe there's an abrupt decay to make this all work out.
10 plus 4 is 14. That's lethal.
Fatal Push will do it.
Was kind of risky for Kirill to go for the Batterskull, but if he just keeps up Cryptic Command turn after turn, that's not going to get him anywhere either.
Well, with that one ending 2-0 for Magnus, we get a chance to jump across and see whether or not Marcio Carvalho can even the score here against Humberto Pataka. This game's just kind of kicked off. We got a few turns in, and we can see Tarmogoyfs battling on both sides. Those two will bounce, but Humberto Pataka also with Death Shadow in play and a Nile Spellbomb to potentially mean that the Death Shadow deck can't keep its Tarmogoyfs big and also potentially can't get its threats back with the likes of Liliana. Potentially even stop a bit of Delirium in response to Traverse the Unveiled. I actually really like using Graveyard Hate against Jund Death Shadow, even though it doesn't come across immediately as being a heavily graveyard-focused deck.
No. And even after Cyber, they're bringing in Lingering Souls, so you might grab that one as well. You might shrink a Tarmogoyf, as you said. Like,
and you get to draw a card as well. Everyone loves that, right?
unless it's Storm or Script, and you don't get to draw a card. Always wonder how good Deathrite Shadow would, Deathrite Shaman would be in this format.
I would guess pretty good.
Yeah.
There's not really been too many formats. I mean, even in Standard it was okay. And every other format As soon as it gets to play around with fetch lands, it's just a beast. An elf shaman beast.
1 mana planeswalker.
It has a lot of abilities. As things stand, though, Marcio Carvalho having to figure out exactly how he wants to sequence things here. The range of where things could have gone gets a little bit bigger after sideboarding, depending on how people feel like the matchup actually goes. He does appear to have a white card in hand.
He kind of wants his opponent to get rid of the Nile Spellbomb, just so that his Ulvenwalds will be better in the late game, because now he just cannot play them. I mean, searching up for a basic land is not what he want to be doing.
Yeah, the times that you use it to search for a basic land are because you really need to, rather than because you want to. It's another card that effectively lets you thin your deck, make it a bit more consistent.
Oh, he's still going to do it. He doesn't even have Delirium.
It may be that this is Marcio Carvalho's way of saying, I recognize that I'm not going to be able to do an exciting traverse here, so I'm going to at least make it so that I'm making positive mana-efficient plays on my turn.
I think what he wants to do here is make sure he's got 5 mana next turn, so he can play Lingering Souls and flashback it immediately.
That's interesting, because it is a card that there's, between casting it the first time and flashing it back, there's not a point where there's priority for Humberto Pataka here.
No.
And because Nile Spellbomb only targets one graveyard, it's not as if Tarmogoyf is going to lose all of its claws from an activation. Pataka there trying to be mana efficient, using his Nile Spellbomb there in order to draw a card, in addition to clearing out Marcio's graveyard. Looks like there might be a Watery Grave in hand for Pataka, so he is on a version of Death Shadow that presumably has access to Stubborn Denial somewhere in its 75. It's amazing how, looking at the fetch land base of Death Shadow, it can be quite difficult to determine which colours your opponent might have access to after sideboarding. It's only when you actually see the likes of Godless Shrine or Watery Grave or similar that you actually get clued up as to all the things you might be facing.
Yep, like both Godless Shrine and Watery Grave are black, so as long as you play 8 black fetch lands, you get to search for it with pretty much every fetch land. You could even run more black fetch lands.
Well, the jig is up now. Watery Grave coming down, untapped, so Pataka going down to 8 life. Meanwhile, Death Shadow going up to 5 power and toughness. Creature, land, instant, and artifact in the graveyard right now, so those Tarmogoyfs each 4/5. Which means Death Shadow, the biggest creature on the battlefield for the first time in the game.
Colligan's Command, is that? What is the other card? Cannot see it. It's got a Mishra's Bauble for sure. It's got a second Tarmogoyf.
It may be that if Pataka feels like his hand is okay, that he holds on to the bauble for a little bit of time just in case his graveyard gets hit, so that he can get back up to Delirium quickly. Or back up to Tarmogoyf being relevant quickly, depending on how you look at it. So Humberto Pataka has given Marcio Carvalho damage on him for free. Humberto down to just 8, of course. Marcio Carvalho is taking a bit of free damage on the other side of things. He's not had to use too many fetch lands. He's actually been playing many of his lands tapped rather than taking damage early in this mirror match. And chooses, at least on the face of things, for Tarmogoyfs to bounce because he has a fatal push for Death Shadow. Even though Pataka played Watery Grave untapped, looks like he did not have a Stubborn Denial, because I think that would have been a creature he wanted to keep around.
Could it be that Martial sideboards out his Death Shadow?
Interesting. It would certainly change the face of the way that you need to manage your life total and mean that you don't have to sort of figure out the details of how that works. So post-combat, Kolaghan's Command here, the extra point needed to kill off Tarmogoyf, and it gets back Death Shadow. That's what Kolaghan's Command was drawn up to do, generate all kinds of card advantage.
Yeah, this one was huge. I mean, killing the Tarmogoyf and adding another threat to board, that's pretty much as you want from this card.
Stomping Ground tap there. Once again, Marcio Carvalho protecting his life total rather than letting it slip. He knows how much damage could come through from Umberto Pataka's creatures, and actually Pataka at this point with a 5/5 Death Shadow plus that Tarmogoyf is close to being able to threaten lethal, depending on whether or not he's post-sideboard got the access to the likes of Teemo Battle Rage.
Yeah, now he's actually already got instant creature and land, so he can play Lingering Souls and play the Ulven Wall to find something. Problem is that he cannot find, well, he can find that shadow, but he cannot play it afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, that one of the strengths of Death Shadow, costing just 1 mana, it means that you're able to have turns where you get to play a lot of threats. Anytime that Death Shadow is a 1 mana 4/4 even, it is well ahead of the curve, and frequently we've seen it's much bigger than that. So Marcio is traversing now, making the most of the fact that he has the opportunity to do so with Delirium for the first time in the game. And goes for a Ranger of Eos, so he clearly has some 1-drops to search for.
He's going for the long game here.
And Marcio saving time a little bit, casts a second Traverse the Unwild, and there is a Death Shadow. So what he's saying here is, I have access to more Death Shadows than you, and if you do attack me, you best make sure it's lethal, because I'm going to have some gigantic creatures after the fact. This is really interesting.
Yeah, two very interesting turns. I mean, Humberto had a very good turn with the Kolaghan's Command, but Marcia's turn was pretty good too. Adding two blockers to the board and searching up a lot of threats.
I really like how Marcio's playing this. It's very interesting to me that sort of basically he's saying, you damage yourself as much as you want. I'm going to preserve my life total as much as I want, because I know that sooner or later you're going to damage me anyway.
Yep.
The one thing he needs to be careful of course, is a big explosion of damage in that case, i.e. the likes of Teemo Battle Rage, but right now he seems to be navigating that fairly well. And Umberto needs to think very carefully about his attacks here. If he attacks for 10, then Marcio's going to be able to play, we think, well, some number of 7/7 Death Shadows, depending on whether or not there's a land incoming for Marcio Carvalho this next turn.
Is Teemo Battle Rage lethal? Go down to 5. So it's 8, 16. No, it's 1 damage short actually. If it's only Teemo Battle Rage. 1 cycler, well, 1 street rate or something else is lethal.
A complicated set of decisions here for Umberto Pataka, as I don't believe that he actually does have the Teemo Battle Rage in this spot.
This is so complicated. Do I want to attack my opponent so he can play all of his Death Shadow? Or do I just leave him at 16 and leave him with death cards in his hand? It might actually be better in this situation to just not attack, right? Because you don't want your opponent to go down to 12 by letting through the Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, I guess that based on the fact you have perfect information on what's in your opponent's hand, if you pass the turn here, then the only way that Marcio is getting to a point where he can cast Death Shadows and have them be alive involves Street Wraith into Fetch Land. Some number of Street Wraiths. Fetch Land into Shock isn't enough to make Death Shadow a real thing. But as it is, Humberto has attacked here, and Marcio with a single block.
So he's taking 5, goes down to 11. That makes his Death Shadow 2-2. Or you could just Lingering Souls and play Ranger of Vias. This is actually quite an interesting matchup. So Marsh Flats goes down to 5 probably. So takes 8, goes down to 8. This is hard. This is not regular Magic. Well, it is regular Magic, but it's different Magic than what we're used to be playing for so many years.
And the reason for the single block there was that it was just enough to mean that Teemo Battle Rage alone was not going to be enough.
I think it would have been enough. Like if he would have gone for a fetch land, go down to 5, so the Teemer, the Death Shadow would have been 8/8 times 2 is 16. I guess he was just not suspecting. Maybe it's a card you want to cyber out after in the mirror. So maybe he's assuming Pataka knows what he's doing.
Complicated stuff, and you can see a little furrow in Humberto Pataka's brow here. He picked up the first game relatively easily with a double mulligan for Marcio, meaning he wasn't ever really able to get any traction. In this second game, though, Marcio's clearly had a game plan, and we'll find out in the next turn or so whether or not it pays off for him, as a Traverse of the Elvenwald from Humberto Pataka here with an easy Delirium fetches another Death Shadow, which I think we're likely to see cast immediately. Humberto just double checking, making sure you know all of the life totals are correct at all times is a very big deal in this matchup.
Is it Architects of Will in his hand?
It looks a little bit like it. An extra cycler.
Just as an artifact, an extra artifact?
I mean, it's an artifact creature, cycler, which means that getting to Delirium is a little bit easier. It seems to me like a fairly unexciting one if you ever intend on casting it, but maybe that's not really a concern. Plays a Death Shadow and another Tarmogoyf, so he has a lot of threats on this board. If he's got removal as his last card in hand, he may be able to go wide enough that he can get through Marcio's defenses here, but don't forget that Marcio also has another Lingering Souls in the graveyard, so this is a complicated board state. So Marcio's pickup for the turn was a Tarmogoyf. That means that he has the option of, first off he's casting another Lingering Souls, he can then cast Death Shadow and a Tarmogoyf. That's the most mana efficient option for him here, because while casting Ranger Vios and Death Shadow is the same amount of mana, he doesn't get as many blockers that way.
Yeah, he's got to block at least 3 creatures. He basically wants to maybe even go down to 1 life and hope his own Death Shadow is big enough. This is quite interesting. And Marcio, despite being on the back foot all game long, I feel like he has a good chance of winning here.
Yeah, it's all on Humberto now to make sure that if he's going to attack, that he can find a way of making it lethal. If he can't find a way of making it lethal, there's a strong argument for just not attacking here. I mean, he does need to worry that Lingering Souls tokens, those spirits do fly, so in some respects, it's easier for Marcio to get through damage than it is Umberto. Another Traverse the Oldenwald. Are we going to see some blood rush here? If he has it, that would definitely be interesting. But typically, we're not seeing quite so much of that from many of these Death Shadows anymore.
I think he's looking at street rate.
Now, if he's looking at Street Wraith here, how much of it is that he actively wants to lower his life total, and how much of it is basically him saying, I want a rebuy to try and draw a big spell?
Or he wants the Swamp Walk.
The Swamp Walk is interesting, I guess. He does go for Death Shadow in the end. He definitely considered other options there.
Problem is that he cannot really attack. Well, he can. Well, yeah, he can attack with the Tarmogoyfs. Because the Death Shadow is only a 3/3 at this point. But he's got to be careful about the swing back. He's only at 7. Attacks with his 6/6 Death Shadow. If Marcio blocks 1, he goes down to 4.
There is Verdant Catacombs in play, though, so in principle, there's an extra 3 points of damage coming through from each Death Shadow if Umberto Pataka wishes. It'll be a risky move, but
if he would have searched up for a street rate, then Marcio would have to double block. Because street rate brings him down to 5, Fetchland brings him down to 2, and that means Death Shadow is 11/11. But now Marcio can actually let through 1 Death Shadow.
And the problem with that line, I guess, is that you double block with some of your ground pounders and then swing back for lethal in the air. This way round, a single block enough to stay alive.
Yeah, I think maybe street rate would have been the better go-to for here.
As it is, Marcio passes back. Those are his blocks. And Umberto not too keen to sacrifice his fetch land to get extra damage in there, because that's only going to mean that he is closer to death himself from Lingering Souls and similar. Another copy of Death Shadow coming into play. 3 Death Shadows now for Umberto Pataka. Each of them are 6/6. Meanwhile, Marcio Carvalho, 4 life. That means he's got a 9/9 Death Shadow. And now he gets a chance to play the Range of Eos that he fetched up a few turns ago now. Finds presumably 2 more Death Shadows of his own here. There we see them. Is there the mana to play both of them, or is it just going to be 1 for now?
Just 1. He drew another 1, so he's got still 2 in hand. All them avatars.
And Marcio chooses not to attack with his spirits there. I guess he also needs to respect that Umberto's Death Shadows can get bigger, and ideally just keeping around some of those spirits so he can at least threaten to attack in a subsequent turn is more valuable than actually attacking in the current turn, because it influences what Umberto wants to do with his own life total. This is complicated. The days where people said that the aggro decks were the easy decks in the format to play are not today.
It's not been true for a very long time. Even in Standard, Mardu Vehicle is one of the harder decks. He's not attacking anymore? That's weird. So what is his plan?
Well, Inquisition of Kozilek means that whatever the plan was, it's going to be revealed. The response is Abrupt Decay on Death Shadow.
There's more where that came from.
So many more. Now, worth noting, it's currently 1-0 to Umberto Pataka, and our clock is reading at 9 minutes. if Marcio Carvalho wants to win this one, he's going to have to get a wiggle on, as we say in the business.
The wiggling business?
Yes, absolutely. Tim Wiggleby.
Attacks for one, decides to keep back his one spirit. Doesn't really matter whether Humberto is at 5 or 6, because he's dealing 2 damage a turn. I don't think he's counting on his ground creatures to deal damage ever.
Yeah, we have a big old bun fight of Death Shadows on both sides on the ground.
I feel like he drew a Liliana.
Anytime someone suddenly decides to check out their graveyard, there's definitely a reason to think that that might be the case. Taps 3. There is Liliana of the Last Hope.
Is it Marshall's last hope? Because this is actually pretty good now. Can start killing the spirits, or we get back some creatures. I think killing a spirit here is the way to go. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, the board at relative parity in terms of creatures.
Did you see that?
I did not. What's the pickup here?
A second Lingering Souls.
Wow. Big pickup there for Marcio Carvalho.
What do you do if your opponent kills one of your spirits? You make 4 new of them. No.
Yeah, the Lingering Souls tokens very, very good at pressuring Planeswalkers. Potentially pressuring Humberto Pataka's life.
He's at 5.
He's at 5. He is facing 5 flying creatures. Now we know that, of course, he can deal with one of them with Liliana. But
another Dead Shadow.
yeah, suddenly Humberto Pataka in a race that he's not looking favoured to win. That was a huge pickup for Marcio Carvalho there.
Kill 1. Yeah, still got more than 5 blockers there.
Just the casual 7 Death Shadows on the battlefield at any one time.
Quads. He's gotta be careful here. 3, kill that one, 5 blockers left. Then he needs to have drawn a creature.
Now, what happens in this world if Humberto Pataka draws a removal spell?
Depends. If it's Maelstrom Pulse, I hope he doesn't target Dead Shadow.
Marcio Carvalho, very expressive face when he plays. Never quite sure how much of that is a little bit of Hollywooding to try and convince his opponents of the best way to play, but one way or another, he displays a lot of emotion when he plays.
He actually drew Maelstrom Pulse. He's afraid. If he kills both the spirits, then he dies to a removal spell. It's still a pretty good draw, to be fair.
Well, this kills 5 creatures.
Can Marshall kill his...
4 creatures,
no, he cannot. I would say maybe Marshall can point his own removal at one of his spirits to keep the others alive.
And as things stand, Humberto has 1 creature's worth of overlap on him, and all of those creatures are lethal if they swing in, assuming that this Maelstrom Pulse resolves. Now, if Marcio has a piece of removal for any one of those creatures, suddenly he's in a space where his Death Shadows are enough to block... Oh, no, his Death Shadows are losing in a fight to Humberto's Death Shadows.
He's attacking? Oh, that's super risky. He dies to 1 removal now. No!
And there is a fatal push.
Why did he attack? He was gonna win the late game. He was up a game. Oh, he throws away the game. His Death Shadows survive, and he's getting one back. Oh, that's game for Marcio. Just like that.
And the way that that game went was sculpted over a lot of time. The big concern for Marcio here, if he has in fact won this game, is he's going to have to find a way of winning another game if he wants to win this match. And there's only 3.5 minutes on the clock. 3 minutes and change.
Wow. Umberto Pataka, that attack was not necessary.
So now we've started to learn a little bit about Marcio Carvalho's game plan for this Death Shadow mirror, which is not necessarily to do anything untoward to harm one's own life total, because you know what, that life total is going to go down anyway. We'll see whether or not he has to make any spot adjustments in order to win a 3-minute game.
Yeah, Umberto Pataka, he knows it. He should not have attacked her. I mean, with the Liliana, it's 5. It would go up to 6. Lexter, that's ultimate, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's slow and it's steady, but you know what? Yeah, Maelstrom Pulse pass. Marcio doesn't have any good attacks there.
No.
I guess that there's the worry of what happens if Marcio draws a shock land. Suddenly, he's the one with the bigger Death Shadows, and...
But the thing is, you can have bigger Death Shadows. You need to have more creatures and bigger Death Shadows so you can start attacking. Because if you have like this, in this case, 3 bigger Death Shadows than your opponent's 4, that's fine. Your opponent will just double block or something and then keep two others and then kill you in the backswing. So it's very complicated. It's not only how big are my Death Shadows, it's how many creatures are there on the board. Can he just jump and kill me on the backswing like what happened here?
And I guess that the reason that Lingering Souls has ended up being so good in this mirror is that it's a card that represents 4 creatures in a matchup where getting the overlap on creatures is a bit tricky.
Yep.
Likewise, I mean, we saw Marcio with main deck Ranger of Eos. That's another way of having just more creatures on the battlefield than your opponent. All right, so these players presenting, and there's 1 minute and 35 seconds left on the clock. We are in Turbo Magic mode, even though we're in Live Magic mode. Looks like both players have kept, and we're kicking things off here.
Surprise with some fetches. 17. I wonder what the life totals will be after turn 1.
Yeah, Mishra's Bauble also going on here. Looks like there's a Street Wraith.
15. Umberto not wasting any life. Well, he's wasting life.
Or depending on how you look at it, wasting a lot of life.
There we go. 13. Let's count. Thoughtseize. 11. Ah. Oh, yeah. There we go. Put my 9 life. There you go. You can have it.
Nearly half of his life total going immediately. Takes Inquisition of Kozilexes, Fatal Push, Lingering Souls, Tarmogoyf, etc. And Marcio's like, you do not have time to write these down. We've got less than a minute left on this clock. He's just playing with his hand face up, simply so that he can keep the game moving along. He doesn't want to have anything holding up. He's just got to play a Verdant Catacombs and pass. Those other cards face up are his hand. 20 seconds left. I mean, the interesting thing is here, Umberto Pataka, in some respects, by putting himself down to 11, he has basically said, I've put myself in a position to be able to lose a very fast game, where Marcio Carvalho is not. All right, time has been called. It looks like the judges just making clear exactly where they are in the game, because 5 extra turns is all these guys are going to get. It's definitely possible for this game to end in that amount of time.
Yeah, one big attack with Death Shadow. I mean, Umberto already got a 4-4. It's so crazy. He's at 9. It's turn 2. His opponent did not attack.
Yeah, this is not your traditional Magic in any shape or form. That brief moment of Turbo Magic is all over. They're on turn 0 now, and at this point, while I'm sure that judges can step in and give them warnings if they believe that they're playing too slowly, you know, stalling is still a thing. Even if you're an extra turn, you've got to keep the tournament moving. At this point, they're going to be taking their sweet time over decisions to make sure that they don't mess anything up. I get the feeling this is going to be a game that Humberto Pataka, or this is going to be a match that Humberto Pataka looks back on and wonders where he should have adjusted his lines of play, because he has been winning for most of this match by my estimation, but the score right now is 1-1, and I think there's a good chance that this game is going to end in a draw. So Mishra's bauble to pick up there for Carvalo. Takes a look at what's going to be coming from his opponent.
Yeah, this time around he could have targeted himself, but he wants to play his Tarmogoyf anyway, so there's no real value in knowing what card you will shuffle away. If he would have had a 1-drop, then it would have been better to target himself to see whether or not he wants to use his fetch land.
Mishra's bauble, the cold snap card. We're now actually, we've reached a point where the distance in time between Ice Age coming out and cold snap coming out is shorter than the distance between cold snap coming out and now. That's how long ago cold snap was. Doesn't feel like that long to me. Maybe I'm just getting old.
Yeah.
Tarmogoyf to play here. Pretty big Tarmogoyf as they come. Pataka though definitely has the option to make his Death Shadow bigger. This is turn 1, so Humberto Pataka has 3 turns worth of turn 2, sorry, so he has 2 turns worth of attacking.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see a winner here. Well, it could actually be Humberto, if he goes fetch, go down to 6. Liliana let you sacrifice, but I don't think he's got the fetch.
Yeah, currently we have artifact, creature, land, sorcery. Do we have any instants in there? I'm not sure we do.
Yeah, he needs the fetch here. Fetch, go down to 6, fatal push, and play another Death Shadow. That's how we should go this turn. But he's gonna cycle here. Architects of Woe. Or not.
Humberto, so many options. This is what happens when everything in your deck is good and cheap. You can do it all, or nearly all. Traverse the Umbral. I guess that getting a second Death Shadow on the board now sets up for trying to do it all next turn.
Ooh, he can search up non-basics, because he's got... There we have the fetch.
Yeah, has Delirium, so fetches a non-basic, uses that to fetch up a Blood Crypt.
Goes to 6, kill the Tarmogoyf, play another Death Shadow. Attack you for 7.
So Carvalo goes to 9. And just a pass back. Now Marcio's at a point where, well, that abrupt decay, a big pickup here in terms of making sure that he doesn't lose this game. If he wants to actively win the game though, needs threats on the board, and he has a Death Shadow of his own, currently a 4/4, but that's hauntingly close to being able to kill Humberto, and with a fetch land he has the option whenever he wants of going to a life total where he's able to kill Pataka. Architects of Will getting cycled there.
Yeah, and good thing Marcia didn't go for Lingering Souls, because Humberto has Maelstrom Pulse once again.
Yeah, Maelstrom Pulse here would be awkward. Liliana though, now we're kind of talking. Unfortunately though, doesn't have a way, I don't think, of dealing himself the additional damage that he needs.
See what he did there? Took away the extra turns. Ah, Judge saw it.
Is there a Street Wraith?
No, but there's, yeah, no need. I think that's a draw. Godless Shrine. I think the long game could have been quite interesting. Probably Marshall's favored because he's got lingering souls. But
Yeah, I mean, what I've learned from this matchup is, number one, this is a very interesting mirror, especially after sideboarding. But number two, just because it's an aggro mirror does not mean that it can't go to time. There's the handshake. Two glum faces there. Neither of these guys wanted a draw.
I think Marshall should be the one to be the most happy about it because he was losing all the time, and Humberto basically threw away game 2.
So that is the end of our round here in round 5 of Grand Prix Copenhagen. Neither of these players advancing to 5-0, but you can bet that there will be some, and we'll get a chance to see some of them in this very next round just after these messages.